What do Bruce Lee, Harry Potter, and a real French anarchist have in common? They're all connected to Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies in ways that will blow your mind. I've uncovered secrets that the directors never expected you to notice, props that were recycled from other famous films, and $1 million mistake that somehow made it into the final cut. It's going to be interesting and definitely informative. This is Fade in Channel. Let's go. The idea for the 2009 Sherlock Holmes film originated with producer Lionel Wigram. While serving as an executive at Warner Bros., Wigram envisioned a fresh take on Sherlock Holmes, portraying him as a bohemian, unconventional, and dynamic character. After leaving the studio in 2006, he continued to develop this concept and later decided to bring his vision of Holmes to the big screen. Instead of a full screenplay, Wigram wrote a brief story outline and commissioned artist John Watkiss to create a 25-page graphic novel based on it. This visual pitch helped bring his idea to life. Ultimately, the film was produced by Warner Bros., where Wigram had previously worked.
Listen to the rabble outside. Listen to the fear.
The main antagonist of film, Lord Blackwood, was partially inspired by the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley. Spiritualism was a popular trend in Victorian Britain, and this cultural fascination influenced producer Lionel Wigram in crafting Blackwood's character. Wigram was drawn to the idea of pitting the rational, deductive Sherlock Holmes against a villain who appears genuinely supernatural, creating a compelling contrast. Throughout the film, it is established that Lord Blackwood had committed crimes against 5 women prior to the main storyline. This number aligns with the 5 victims most historians attribute to Jack the Ripper, though debates persist about additional victims. In a newspaper headline, "London in Terror, Blackwood Lives and the Devil Walks with Him," which Inspector Lestrade hands to Holmes after his release on bail, the names of Blackwood's first 5 victims are listed. The woman whose murder Holmes prevents is named Beatrice Church. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more amazing movie facts, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you don't miss anything. It really helps the channel grow and keeps me motivated to bring you even more great videos. Initially, project was assigned to director Neil Marshall. However, he was later replaced by Guy Ritchie, known for crime thrillers like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. Upon taking the helm, Ritchie insisted on avoiding 2 of the most cliched elements associated with Sherlock Holmes: the phrase "elementary, my dear Watson," and the deerstalker hat. Robert Downey Jr., who played Holmes, also contributed to crafting the detective's wardrobe. He personally purchased a fedora and a pipe from Lock & Co. Hatters, a historic London shop. Although the deerstalker hat is often linked to Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle never explicitly described it in the original stories. The iconic headwear originated from illustrations by Sidney Paget and was later popularized by actor Basil Rathbone in early film adaptations. Ritchie chose to exclude the deerstalker from the film's visual style. Instead, Downey selected a classic fedora, which better suited his portrayal of a more bohemian and unconventional Holmes. Robert Downey Jr. learned about the Sherlock Holmes project through his wife, Susan Downey, who served as a producer on the film. She noted that Holmes' eccentric and slightly unhinged personality was a perfect fit for Downey's acting style. Initially, director Guy Ritchie envisioned a younger actor for the role, inspired by the youthful energy of Batman Begins. However, he ultimately chose Downey. To prepare for the role, Downey lost weight, following advice from Chris Martin of Coldplay, and trained in martial arts to capture Holmes' physicality. Drawing on his experience playing Charlie Chaplin in Chaplin 1992, Downey effortlessly adopted a British accent. Ritchie, a native Englishman, praised Downey's accent as impeccable. Interestingly, during his school years at a boarding school, Ritchie listened to radio broadcasts of Sherlock Holmes stories in the dormitory. These tales left a lasting impression on him, and as a director, he aimed to pay homage to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's original works. When audiences saw the first trailers featuring intense fight scenes, many expressed concern, arguing that Sherlock was not an action hero. However, the filmmakers anticipated this reaction. Producer Wigram and director Ritchie emphasized that in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's original stories, Holmes frequently relies on physical strength and combat skills. Everything Holmes does in Doyle's stories, we aim to bring to the screen, Wyndham explained, highlighting their intent to showcase Holmes's physicality as a core aspect of his character. Over 20 actors were considered for the role of Dr. John Watson. Among them were John Cusack, Gerard Butler, and Chris Pine. Early in the film's development, Colin Farrell was a strong contender for the role, but director Guy Ritchie ultimately chose Jude Law. A longtime fan of Sherlock Holmes, Law was thrilled to portray Watson not as a mere comedic sidekick, but as an equal partner to Holmes. To enhance his performance, Law studied the original stories and even incorporated quotes from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's text into the film's dialogue. Sienna Miller was in negotiations to join the cast before her former fiancé Jude Law was cast as Dr. Watson. However, she ultimately did not appear in the movie. Rachel McAdams, who played Irene Adler, grew frustrated with the daily routine of being laced into a tight corset before donning her period costumes. To playfully resist, she would deliberately puff out her stomach or eat a hearty breakfast before fittings, making it harder for the costume team to fasten the corset. However, her mischievous tactic didn't go unnoticed for long, as the costume department quickly caught on to her antics. Composer Hans Zimmer crafted the soundtrack, incorporating unconventional sounds to match the film's tone. He used an old, out-of-tune piano, purchased for a few $100s, to create a distinctive, quirky sound that he felt perfectly complemented Sherlock Holmes's eccentric personality. The events of the film are set before Sherlock Holmes's encounter with Professor Moriarty. Dr. Watson is already engaged to Mary Morstan. This timeline deviates slightly from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's original stories. In the film, Dr. Watson urges Sherlock Holmes to meet his fiancée, Mary Morstan, but Holmes repeatedly avoids the encounter. In Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's original stories, Mary Morstan first appears as a client in the novel The Sign of the Four. During the investigation, Watson falls in love with her and proposes by the story's conclusion. In Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's stories, Sherlock Holmes is described as a master of Baritsu. In the film, however, Holmes employs Wing Chun, a Chinese martial art famously practiced by Bruce Lee. Robert Downey Jr. is a real-life practitioner of Wing Chun. The brawl with David Garrick in the Punch Bowl pit was choreographed with input from Downey's personal Wing Chun trainer. Additionally, in the final scene where Holmes explains how Lord Blackwood survived his execution, a Wing Chun training dummy known as a Muk-Yan-Jong is visible in the background of the room. This serves as a subtle nod to Downey's martial arts background. Cinematographer Philippe Rousselot employed a high-speed digital camera for specific scenes in the film to enhance the visual storytelling. For instance, in the key moment during the punch bowl fight scene, where Sherlock Holmes delivers a calculated punch to his opponent's jaw, the action was captured in real time within a single second. This footage was then slowed down to create a dramatic 7-second sequence, emphasizing Holmes' analytical fighting style. When Sherlock Holmes says, "Now that you're sitting comfortably, I shall begin," as he starts explaining Lord Blackwood's plan, the line is a subtle homage to the BBC's children's radio program, Listen with Mother, which aired in the 1950s. The show was famous for its opening phrase, "Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin," used to engage young listeners before storytelling. Although Irene Adler plays a significant role in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's original stories, she appears only once in the short story A Scandal in Bohemia, which the film references. In the movie, Holmes keeps her photograph and refers to her as the woman, echoing the original story where she earns this title as the one person who outwitted him. The film was shot in and around London and Manchester, where many picturesque 19th century warehouses provided an authentic Victorian backdrop. The interior of 221B Baker Street, Holmes's iconic residence, was constructed using props previously used to furnish Sirius Black's home in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. By the way, I already told you everything you didn't know about Harry Potter earlier. The link to the video is in the description below. Be sure to check it out. Additionally, the spiral staircase Holmes uses in an escape scene is the same one featured in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, where it leads to Professor Trelawney's divination classroom. In film, Dr. Watson remarks to Holmes, "You know that what you are drinking is for eye surgery?" This line is a subtle nod to Holmes's use of cocaine, a substance historically employed as a local anesthetic in ophthalmological procedures during the Victorian era. In original stories, Holmes is depicted as injecting a cocaine solution. The bridge under construction is the iconic Tower Bridge, which later became one of London's and Britain's most recognizable landmarks. Its construction took place from 1886 to 1894. For the scene in which Sherlock Holmes recreates the black magic ritual, a brief shot of the Punch Bowl pub appears. This is a nod to the real-life pub owned by director Guy Ritchie in London's Mayfair district. 2009 Sherlock Holmes film marks the second time Geraldine James portrayed Mrs. Hudson, the detective's landlady. She previously played the same character in the TV movie adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles. Throughout the film, the letters VR appear, standing for Victoria Regina, the monogram of Queen Victoria, who reigned during the film setting. In story, The Musgrave Ritual, Sherlock Holmes is described as practicing his marksmanship while shooting the letters VR into the wall of his rooms. The film pays homage to this detail, showing Holmes firing his pistol at the same VR initials on his wall. In the film, Mary Morstan asks permission to read Dr. Watson's diaries about his adventures with Sherlock Holmes. This moment is a nod to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's original stories. Of the 60 stories in the Sherlock Holmes canon, 56 are written from Watson's perspective. 2 are narrated by Holmes himself, and 2 are told in the third person. To prepare for his role, Robert Downey Jr. immersed himself in original stories, reading many of the tales to deepen his understanding of the character. Additionally, he watched the acclaimed British television series, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, 1984. In the original theatrical version, Professor Moriarty, appearing only as a shadowy figure, was voiced by actor Andrew Jack. This voice work was recorded before Jared Harris was officially cast as Moriarty in the sequel. However, following the release of the sequel, Jared Harris's voice was dubbed over the original audio in all subsequent DVD, Blu-ray, and television versions of the first film to maintain consistency across the franchise. The 2009 Sherlock Holmes film received 2 Academy Award nominations, one for Best Art Direction and another for Best Original Score, with Hans Zimmer's innovative use of an out-of-tune piano contributing to the latter. While the film did not win either Oscar, Robert Downey Jr. earned a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy for his portrayal of Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes remains a timeless character, and the 2009 Sherlock Holmes film proved his enduring appeal. During its opening weekend, the movie grossed $62 million in the United States. With a production budget of $90 million, it ultimately earned $209 million in the US and $524 million worldwide, making it the 8th highest-grossing film of 2009. Despite its success, it couldn't claim the top spot, as Avatar dominated the box office, breaking records throughout its run. Nevertheless, the strong financial performance of Sherlock Holmes paved the way for at least one sequel, Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows, 2011. Warner Brothers was so eager to release a sequel to the 2009 Sherlock Holmes film that director Guy Ritchie abandoned the DC Comics adaptation logo to focus on the project. Similarly, Robert Downey Jr. was forced to drop out of Jon Favreau's science fiction action film, Cowboys and Aliens. Speculation about who would play Professor Moriarty was widespread, with high-profile names like Brad Pitt, Gary Oldman, Daniel Day-Lewis, Sean Penn, and Javier Bardem reportedly considered for the role. Ultimately, Jared Harris was cast as the iconic villain. Notably, Harris was confirmed for the part at the last minute, with filming beginning just 7 days after his audition. The character of Madame Sinzaharan, played by Noomi Rapace, was not fully developed in the original script. As a result, Rapace had to work extensively to bring depth and life to her role after joining the cast. The character Claude Ravage, portrayed by Thierry Neuvec, is based on the real-life French anarchist François Claudius Conextin, better known as Ravachol. He was executed at the age of 32 in 1892. Surprisingly, the dance scene featuring Jude Law and Noomi Rapace took 3 days to film. On screen, however, the sequence lasts just 15 seconds. The idea to have Sherlock Holmes disguise himself as a woman rather than a priest as originally planned came from Robert Downey Jr. Whether intentional or not, this choice echoes a moment in The Adventure of the Mazarine Stone, where Holmes is described as having once disguised himself as an old woman. Additionally, Holmes's appearance during the train fight scene with smeared makeup and a disheveled look is an allusion to the Joker as portrayed by Heath Ledger. In the climactic battle with Professor Moriarty, Holmes uses a two-handed grapple to immobilize his opponent before they both plunge into the Reichenbach Falls. While Conan Doyle does not describe the fight in detail and only recounts Holmes's survival, illustrator Sidney Paget depicted the struggle shows Holmes and Moriarty locked in a characteristic two-handed grapple, a pose mirrored by Robert Downey Jr. During the scene where Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Madame Simza ride horses, the soundtrack features a musical nod to the 1970 western Two Mules for Sister Sarah, composed by Ennio Morricone. In that film, Clint Eastwood's character accompanies a slow-moving Sister Sarah, played by Shirley MacLaine. Similarly, in this sequence, the group is led by a deliberately unhurried Holmes. Sherlock Holmes sends Dr. Watson a note that reads, "Come at once if convenient. If inconvenient, come all the same." This is a direct quote from Conan Doyle's short story, The Adventure of the Creeping Man, 1923. In Conan Doyle's stories, Dr. Watson is typically named John H. Watson. However, in the 1891 short story, The Man with the Twisted Lip, his wife, Mary, refers to him as James. This discrepancy puzzled scholars for years until Dorothy Sayers, a renowned mystery writer, proposed that the H in Watson's name stands for Hamish, a Scottish variant of James. Filmmakers adopt this theory, giving Dr. Watson the middle name Hamish. During Dr. Watson's bachelor party, he is shown wearing two medals, signifying his service in the Second Anglo-Afghan War, 1878-1880. The chess match between Sherlock Holmes and Professor Moriarty is inspired by a real-life game from the Second Piatigorsky Cup Tournament in Santa Monica, California, in 1966, between Bent Larsen and Tigran Petrosian. Notably, Moriarty's first move against Holmes is advancing the queen's pawn from c2 to c4, known as the English opening. Chessboard motif runs throughout the film, appearing both in literal chess games and as a black and white tiled floor. The white squares symbolize good, while the black squares represent evil. Warner Bros. Invested approximately $1 million to film the opening scene in Strasbourg, France. However, only 3 shots from this location made it into the final cut. 23 seconds in the opening sequence and 13 seconds under an arch around the 52-minute mark. With a $125 million budget, Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows grossed $543 million worldwide, proving the franchise's massive commercial potential. Unsurprisingly, no one wanted to end the series on such a high note. Development on a third film began almost immediately after the sequel's release. In 2011, screenwriter Drew Pearce was brought on board. But over the years, multiple writers and directors cycled through the project, and release dates were repeatedly postponed. In 2019, Dexter Fletcher was appointed director, with a premiere slated for December 2021. The COVID-19 pandemic stalled progress, and the project has been largely silent since. Robert Downey Jr. and his wife, producer Susan Downey, have repeatedly expressed enthusiasm for expanding the Sherlock Holmes universe, drawing inspiration from Downey's decade-plus involvement in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They envision spin-offs, TV series, and additional films. In 2020, HBO Max greenlit 2 Sherlock Holmes-inspired shows under Team Downey, but no updates on their status have emerged in years. Plot details for the third film remain under wraps, though it's confirmed the story will take place about 10 years after the events of A Game of Shadows. In 2023, director Dexter Fletcher revealed he had collaborated with Downey and screenwriter Joe Penhall on the script at Downey's home. Susan Downey and Team Downey executive Amanda Barrow later reaffirmed that the project remains a top priority for the company and Downey himself. What fact about Sherlock Holmes surprised you the most in this video? And what other story would you like to see a video about in the near future? Tell us in the comments below this video right now. This is Fade In. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.